you do a lot of things like this?
No, this is actually the first time I've done it.
Oh, really?
I moderated like conventions and stuff where, like legal stuff.
And we're talking about the runoff, I think people are doing great stuff. Back and forth, but just when you got this many candidates, as you can see, the presidential election is just too much.
That's been crazy.
Yeah. Just local politics, and everybody knows each other's business.
If you'd like to step up to the mic, you should go live and just look at it.
So I'll see my picture on the screen? Or is it motion censored?
Okay, good luck.
Hey, good evening. If you can have your seats, please take your seats. I want to thank you to the third and final St. Bernard Chamber Forum. My name is Timothy Clements. I'm the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce here in St. Bernard. This is the third forum. We'll be doing the state senate race as well as our parish president race. So we just want to thank you all for being here. First week in November, if need be, we will be doing runoff forums. So just mark your calendars, save the date, first week in November for that. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Bobby Schroeder, who's been one of the committee members for the forum committee, and he's going to give some housekeeping instructions. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Good evening. Third time's a charm, right? I'm going to read a few little housekeeping instructions. The primary election will be held on October 24th, 2015, and the general election will be held on November 21st, 2015. To register, view ballots, or find polling locations, please visit www.sos.la.gov. This is a reminder that the St. Bernard Chamber of Commerce does not endorse any candidate for elected office. The purpose of this forum is strictly educational. We believe it is important for the business community and the public to have the opportunity to hear and learn more about candidates running for elected office. Please note that these questions were prepared by a committee of the St. Bernard Chamber of Commerce and Leadership St. Bernard. Unless noted by the moderator, no candidate has had the opportunity to review these questions ahead of time. During the forum, the candidates may request for a question to be repeated. Candidates may not, however, request for further elaboration or interpretation of the question. Candidates should do their best to answer the questions as presented by the moderator. Questions will not be taken from the audience. Candidates will be mindful of the timekeeper and will end promptly when his or her time to speak has ended. Candidates will be respectful of their opponents and refrain from any interruptions. Additionally, the audience will be respectful of all candidates and will refrain from any form of interruption. Please turn off all cell phones at this time. We'd like to thank the following: St. Bernard Parish Government, Roxanne Adams, Clerk of Council, and Ryan Fink, Director of Film and Television. To introduce our moderator, Stephen Ruther.
Hello, thank you all. My name's Stephen Ruther. I'm the Chief Executive Officer with the St. Bernard Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest moderator for the evening, Mr. David Hammer with WWL-TV. Award-winning investigative reporter David Hammer joined WWL-TV's 4 Investigates unit in the fall of 2012. He contributes to Eyewitness News broadcasts and WWL-TV.com. Mr. Hammer won the 2014 Jim Metcalf Memorial Award for Story of the Year from the New Orleans Press Club. The award honored him and former WWL-TV reporter Brendan McCarthy for their multi-part investigation of offshore oil and gas operations called Safety Last. Mr. Hammer, a 7th-generation New Orleanian, came to WWL-TV after a 6-year career as a reporter at the Times-Picayune. Mr. Hammer was the newspaper's lead investigative reporter on former New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin. He exposed many of the criminal dealings of Nagin Associates, and Hammer broke the story that Nagin himself was the target of a federal grand jury probe. In addition to his investigations into state and local government politics, he led the newspaper's investigation of the Deepwater Horizon oil rig disaster and broke several stories about key engineering decisions that contributed to the BP well blowout. That work won Mr. Hammer his first prize for the nation's best Beat Reporting of 2010 from the Society of Environmental Journalists. He was also part of a team of journalists that won the National Journalism Awards 2010 Edward Meeman Prize for Environmental Reporting and the Associated Press Managing Editor's Top Regional News Writing Award. Mr. Hammer also led the paper's coverage of Hurricane Katrina housing recovery, including the road home and hazard mitigation programs. His investigative reports revealed fraud and waste in the state-run grant programs. He won the AP Regional Award for Investigative Reporting for his 2011 work uncovering graft and fraud in Louisiana's Home Elevation Grant Program. A graduate of Harvard University, Mr. Hammer's previous journalism experience also includes 5 years spent working for newspapers in New England and 4 years with the Associated Press. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening, Mr. David Hammer.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you, Tim, and to the whole committee for inviting me to do this. This is all about informing and shining a light on government and politics, and that's what my work is all about at WWL. So I appreciate everybody for being here, and we're going to get right to it with our first forum, the Louisiana State Senate District 1 race between Sharon Hewitt and Pete Schneider. Thank you, Mrs. Hewitt and Mr. Schneider. Appreciate you being here. Let you know that the candidates will be allowed to provide an opening statement, and we will ask you a total of 4 questions and then allow a closing statement. The opening statement will be 60 seconds long, and the first 3 question responses will be 1.5 minutes long each. The 4th question response, which was prepared in advance, will be 2 minutes long. And the closing statement will be 1 minute. So we'll begin the forum with your opening statements. Again, you each have 60 seconds, and we'll begin with Mrs. Hewitt.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight and giving me an opportunity to introduce myself to you. I'm Sharon Hewitt. I'm a mechanical engineer from LSU. And I started out working for the oil business. I worked for Shell for 20 years. I began on the drilling rig, which was an unusual thing back in 1982 for women. But I enjoyed that experience and learned a lot and believe that I earned a lot of credibility in that process. 18 years later, I had a job as a deepwater asset manager with a significant budget, lots of employees, and about 10% of Shell's domestic production. And I left that to come home and raise our 2 children and get involved in the community. I've been active in the school system. We've lived in Slidell for over 30 years, and I'm running for the state senate because I think that you deserve real problem solvers and not just career politicians that are kicking the can down the road. And I would very much like to represent St. Bernard in this district.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hewitt. Now, Mr. Schneider, you have 60 seconds for your opening statement.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm Pete Schneider, and my lovely wife of almost 36 years, Elizabeth, is here with us. We have 3 kids, Peter, Christopher, and Catherine. And we co-own a business on the North Shore called St. Joe Brick. And this year we're celebrating 24 years, 124 years young. And we're a small business. We have about 27 employees, and it's important that we abide by the rules and regulations that go on. We make a payroll every week. Now, I've been in the legislature before, but I hadn't been there for 8 years. And the first piece of legislation that I ever authored was called the Scarlet Letter Law. And that law mandates that child molesters, when they're let out of prison, that they have to report to you where they live, what they did, and who they are. That way you can protect your children, and in our cases, we're protecting our grandchildren. Common sense, business sense in the legislature. That's what that's all about.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. We will now move to the first question, and you'll each have 90 seconds to respond. Moving into the next session, what are the 3 key issues you'd address as being the most important priorities for your legislative district and why? Mr. Schneider, please, you can go first.
Okay, thank you. Well, the first thing we need to do is provide budget stabilization, because once you have budget stabilization, you have the dollars that you can spend on the other things that are important in our state. And how do we do that? Well, in 2003, 2004, we had approximately $5.4 billion in tax revenues, and we had $1.5 billion in exemptions. That's not a bad ratio there. Those exemptions are tax credits or things to lure businesses in or to keep them here. But in 2013, 2014, we had $7.5 billion in tax revenues and $7.6 billion in exemptions. $100 million more than what we took in. We need to put all those on the table. We need to review them and see what's going to work for us. Also, it's not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem in Baton Rouge. And those are the things that we need to work on. Once you get that budget stabilization done, then you can fund economic development, infrastructure improvement, roads and bridges. We all know we need more roads and bridges, prevent crime, and reform education. Oh, 15 seconds to go. What I would propose we do in the budget is that we create a legislative budget and let the executive budget come over. But we need the whole legislature working in that process, and then we have a negotiating tool to work with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Hewitt.
Thank you. We do need to reform our budget. I don't know if you know this, but 90% of our budget is constitutionally protected. It is dedicated funds. Only 10% of our budget is discretionary. So that's where all of higher education and healthcare is. So over the years, what they have done is continued to cut higher education and healthcare. And so what I propose and what we need to do is to be able to put everything on the table so that you have an opportunity to fund the most important things. And then those that are nice to haves and are more discretionary may or may not get funded. So I think that's the first priority, is the budget and getting that straight. You know, the second thing is education, both K through 12 and higher education. You know, I think we are on a good path in that right now we have educators from all over the state who are working on the standards to determine which standards are good and which ones are not. And we're going to end up with Louisiana standards that everyone can buy into. And then we can get back to the business of educating our children. You know, the third thing that we need to do is to create jobs and grow the economy. And I think that there are lots of opportunities right here in St. Bernard Parish to do that. You have a vibrant community, you have a film business that you're wanting to grow, we've got a wonderful seafood industry, and of course lots of oil and gas work here at the refineries, but we can do more. And so I look forward to working on those 3 issues in Baton Rouge.
Thank you very much. Now question 2. With Senate District 1 including parts of St. Bernard, St. Tammany, Orleans, and Plaquemines parishes, it is important to have a solid understanding of all parts of the district. Other than public safety and education, what one thing would you tout as a point of pride and accomplishment for St. Bernard Parish? First will be Ms. Hewitt.
Well, I know one thing that's very important to people in St. Bernard, and it's important to me, is to have people that are here representing you. You know, I have been here for the last 6 months in St. Bernard, getting to know the community and understanding your issues and participating with you in events, public events, board meetings, chamber meetings, Economic Development Foundation meetings, Katrina celebrations, to be here and to understand your issues. And I can definitely commit to that going forward, that I will be here and I will be wanting to represent you. I know one of the issues that's also important here in St. Bernard is coastal restoration and protection. And I will fight for you for the dollars that we need to take care of our coast and to protect us, to make sure that we have affordable flood insurance, and to get this community back on its feet. And so I look forward to that, and I'm going to be a visible part of this community. And I'm going to work very hard to represent this community and bring the dollars into this community that you need and you want.
Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Senate District 1 includes parts of St. Bernard, St. Tammany, Orleans, and Plaquemines parishes, and so it's important to have a solid understanding of all parts of the district. Other than public safety and education, what one thing would you tout as a point of pride and accomplishment for St. Bernard Parish?
Well, when I was in the legislature before, the first district that I represented stretched from Slidell all the way to Covington, from Eden Isles to Beauchene. And I made it a point to have town meetings on an annual basis in all locations. And I think that makes a difference, because communication is the most important thing that you can accomplish in any endeavor, but especially when you're representing a constituency such as diverse as we will have in this constituency. And the first thing you need to do is you need to learn how to listen. And I get criticized by my supporters because I don't wave my flag enough, but that's because I learned as a salesman that you have to listen to your customers. And that's what I'll look at as the constituents of St. Bernard and the other parishes as customers, and you treat your customers properly. And to bring in to this area, to bring in better insurance coverage, we need to open it up and bring more companies in. When you have more companies in the state of Louisiana, you have more competition, and it drives down rates. I've already been speaking to the insurance department and Jim Donlan to see where we need to go to get those things happen, because that's important to the people here in this audience and the people that'll be listening outside. So that is what we would need to do, is to maintain our cultural ties here in St. Bernard with the fisheries and with the commercial fishing and everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, the third question, again, 90-second response. In this past session, Louisiana's budget faced a $1.6 billion shortfall. Moving forward, what are the long-term changes you would pursue to help ensure that our state budget is balanced while protecting key components of our economy, education, and health care? And we begin with Mr. Snyder.
Well, I touched on that a little bit in number one about the budget, and I believe that wholeheartedly that those items will work. The other thing that we need to do is that we have 21 constitutionally protected funds in the state of Louisiana that total $2.4 billion. We have 190 statutory funds that are protected with $1.2 billion. So the legislature can now go in and address those that are statutorily protected. Now, we can do that. But on the constitutional dedications, we're unable to do that. We would have to have a constitutional amendment, or we'd have to have a constitutional convention. And I'm in favor of a constitutional convention. This Constitution's been in effect since 1974, and there are so many constitutional amendments that are put forth on an annual basis in a regular session or even in a special session, that by having a constitutional convention, we can bring the people to the table, not the politicians, not the elected officials, bring the people to the table and create such.
Okay. Ms. Hewitt?
You know, when I was working for Shell in the mid-'80s, oil dropped to $12 a barrel. And, you know, we're talking about $40 a barrel right now being tough, $12 a barrel in the mid-'80s. And so the first thing that we did was, you know, we're looking for ways to cut expenses. And so Shell began by cutting out the free coffee in the kitchenettes. And then they said, okay, well, let's cut out the Cokes and the soft-serve ice cream offshore. And so they cut that out. And then they looked for ways to cut out travel and training and those things. And so then the next thing was, this was the big sacred cow. We said, let's look at office supplies. Okay, so this is a true story. This was the largest company in the world at that time, Shell was. So the manager locked up the office supplies, and the only person who had a key was his secretary. And I kid you not, the engineers had to go to the secretary, and you had to prove with your number 2 pencil stub that you were ready for a new pencil. Okay, now this is the largest company in the world. The point of this story, and the reason why this was so impactful, is because it really wasn't about the pencils, right? It was about everything needs to be on the table. If you're counting number 2 pencils, then everything needs to be on the table. And I will take that same kind of attitude to Baton Rouge in looking at ways to cut our expenses. You know, we have like 16,000 consulting contracts right now in Baton Rouge, and I'm pretty sure they're not studying things that are that important to us.
Thank you very much. Now, this will be our final question, and you'll each have 2 minutes to respond to this. And so the public knows you were each given this same question 1 week in advance, so that you could research and prepare a response that is both thoughtful and of greater impact to your district. So your final question is, with the current legislative delegation having taken office in 2012, what do you believe is the single most important piece of legislation passed since then, and why? We'll begin with Ms. Hewitt.
Yes, thank you. Certainly, there has been a lot happening in the area of education in the last 4 years that we could talk about. But something that I think is equally important is what they have not accomplished in the last 4 years, and that is the budget. And we've talked about that quite a bit already. It is the single biggest issue on the table. The past 4 years, we have done nothing but kick the can down the road, and so I think that we need new people with new ideas. But I will also tell you that prior to that, that my opponent did contribute greatly to the budget problems that we have now, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. You know, he chaired the Senate Retirement Committee from 2000 to 2008. Part of what he did was, this is a great example of kicking the can down the road, he deferred payments into the state retirement system. Okay, and what that did is that grew today's retirement cost tremendously, because it has to be actuarially sound by the year 2027. It's kind of like not paying your credit card bill and just paying the minimum payment. You're pushing it down the road, and you end up with a great big payment, and a lot more interest is ringing up. And so that's what he did under his leadership. He pushed the payments out, and the reason why that is hurtful to us right now, if you're in the state of Louisiana or any state agency, as well as the school districts, a much bigger part of their cost now is going to retirement. It is exploding, and that's taking money out of the classrooms. It's taking money away from other high priority items, and that was part of under Mr. Schneider's leadership. The other thing he did was he pushed through what they call the double dip law, and that allowed teachers and other school employees to retire and then get rehired. And what that did is that allowed them to collect both a salary and a pension. It added tremendous cost to the system that we still can't get rid of.
Mr. Snyder, I'm going to ask you this question in a second again, but I'd like to first start by giving you 30 seconds to rebut the specific allegations made by your opponent regarding the deferred payments on the retirement system and the double dip law regarding fired teachers being rehired.
Well, first of all, I was chairman of the retirement committee 4 years under Foster and 4 years under Blanco from 2000 to 2008. And during that period of time, I saved the state hundreds of millions of dollars by not letting these bills go through. What the opponent is talking about, I think, is something that was in 1989. I was elected in 1991 and took office in 1992. The initial unfunded accrued liability is like a mortgage, and it's stretched out not to 2027 but to 2029. And the retirement committee has no authority to make any payments or not make any payments. And it's in the Constitution that these payments will be made, and in the statutes that they will be made on this mortgage basis. And that's the way it was put together before I got there.
Okay.
Now, the state has not missed one payment to any of these funds since that time, and I don't believe they will either. And I know that I overwent, but she talked for about 60 seconds about that, and that's not fair to say something like that.
Okay, I gave you a chance to
Thank you,
give
sir.
a rebuttal specifically on that, and now I'll give you a chance to answer the question which we didn't hear an answer to previously from your opponent. It's specifically what piece of legislation, single most important piece of legislation that was passed since the current legislative group came in 2012.
Okay. Well, I think it was the bill that was passed in the regular session of 2012, and it's called House Bill 838. It became Act 805. And what that legislation does is that it dedicates, and here we go with more dedication, but it's a statutory dedication, which is important, but it dedicates all of those monies that are coming from the BP settlement that are violations. And it totals about $7.2 billion, and that's going to be paid to the state over a 15-year period. And those monies will be used for coastal restoration. And the reason that that is so important is because, and back to dedicated funds, is that this administration for the last 8 years has utilized shifting of doing interagency transfers of funds and then taking those dollars and using them for something else. What I believe we need to do is to have a sound budget. And by having these dollars go in for coastal restoration, which is very important for the coastal parishes. St. Bernard's a coastal parish, Plaquemines a coastal parish, Orleans a coastal parish, and guess what? Even St. Tammany's a coastal parish when you look at the water coming in from this last Hurricane Katrina that hit us hard as well as it hit you. So yes, I think that's the most important piece of legislation that was passed in the last 4 years.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to your closing statements, and you'll each have 1 minute for those. And again, we'll go to Mr. Snyder. Closing statement.
Well, again, thank you for having me tonight. I respectfully ask for those that live in the district for your vote and your support. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and more importantly, I'm a Christian. And I take those things to Baton Rouge. And I have the business experience, the legislative experience, and a lifetime of community service, such as serving on the board of the St. Tammany Economic Development Foundation, the Slidell Rotary, where I was a past president, United Way, serving on an advisory board for Slidell Hospital, a trustee for the Public Affairs and Research Council. But most importantly, I was a soccer coach for our 3 kids. I can go to Baton Rouge and be your voice for strong Christian traditional values. And I'll work hard for you. God bless this state. God bless all those here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mrs. Hewitt, your closing statement, 1 minute.
Thank you. I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I think we need new leadership in this state. We need people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work of the people. We need new ideas. And we need people who are in it for all the right reasons. I have a strong track record, both in business and in the community, of delivering results. And I will represent this parish, and I will be part of this parish and this community. I will fight for you for the dollars that you need, and I will be here in a visible way with an office here where you can come and talk to me and help me solve the problems that are important to St. Bernard. I'm asking for your vote and your prayers and your support on October 24th. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much to both of the candidates, ladies and gentlemen, Sharon Hewitt and Pete Snyder. I'd like to ask the parish president candidates to begin making their way to the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know that we're waiting just a few more minutes to see if other candidates who had committed to appear for the parish president forum will show up. Just a couple more minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now ready to begin the St. Bernard Parish President Forum. The candidates appearing tonight are Wayne J. Landry, Guy McGinnis, Tony Ricky Mellerine, and Roland Jimmy Rokas. Not appearing tonight are President David Peralta, Louis Pomes, and John L. Young. The candidates will be allowed to provide an opening statement. They'll be asked a total of 6 questions and then allowed a closing statement. The opening statement will be 60 seconds long, and responses for questions 1 and 6, which are prepared responses, will be 2 minutes each. Responses to questions 2 through 5 will be 60 seconds long each, and the closing statement will also be a minute long. So we'll begin our forum with your opening statements, for which you'll have each 60 seconds. We'll begin with Wayne Landry.
Well, first, thanks to the Chamber for having the forum. We appreciate the opportunity to at least reach out to the public and let them know what we're all about. My name's Wayne Landry. I'm the son of Floyd and Josie Landry. My brothers are Floyd, Bobby, and Kerry. My girlfriend's Ricky back there. My children are Alexis, Lacey, and Dylan. My grandchildren are Tyler, Katie, and Lola. I'm a product of St. Bernard Parish. I graduated from St. Bernard Parish High School, received a college degree in public administration from the University of Southwestern Louisiana. I'm pretty much an entrepreneur, which I've managed over 25 successful companies, over 700 employees, dealt with multi-million-dollar budgets, fully prepared to take on the role of parish president and move our parish forward into the future, protecting a much better image than what we enjoy today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Guy McGinnis.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber and the leadership of St. Bernard for providing this forum tonight. I am Guy McGinnis. I offer my candidacy for high office, President of St. Bernard Parish. I'm a graduate of McNeese State University, and I am uniquely qualified for the office I seek. My administration will be transparent, professional, and accountable while serving your community. I pledge that all departments will be accountable to you, while managers and supervisors have a new sense of urgency to follow improved internal control procedures to safeguard our community's assets. Water quality, streets, and drainage will be a top priority. I appreciate the excellent work of our parish employees and believe that they will do even better when led by someone who represents, who respects what they do, and will provide the resources necessary to effectively carry out their daily mission. I look forward to working with our hospital service district and the parish council to improve our hospital and make it a success.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Tony Ricky Mellery.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I sincerely appreciate your presence and the time you took tonight. I also want to thank the Chamber for holding this forum. I am Tony Ricky Mellery, and I have been married to my beautiful bride, Paula Cantrell, for 43 years. We are blessed to have 2 healthy children and 3 precious grandchildren. I have lived in our unique parish my entire life. Like most of you, I'm also Islanos descendant. I was born and raised in Vala. I attended our excellent public schools and then graduated from St. Bernard High. Personally, I've always been committed and involved in our community, from the Knights of Columbus to coaching at Bowman, volunteering at the Oyster Festival, chairing fishing rodeos, you name it, I've done it. Professionally, I've had extensive training in leadership, public relations, and management, which shaped me into this proven leader I am today. I have almost 40 years of experience in business management. I developed the first fisheries department in our region. For 8 years, I was your councilman in District E. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Roland Jimmy Rokas.
Thank you all for having us here. I've been married to my wife for 47 years, Teresa. We are lovely, have 2 lovely children, 3 grandchildren. We have been involved in no politics before, and I am 100% behind St. Bernard Parish. That's what I am committed for. My financing is all 100% of my campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, for our first question, you will each have 2 minutes to respond. And again, to remind the public, you were each given this same question in advance so you could research and prepare a response that is thoughtful. So your first question is, please describe your idea of success by the end of your 4-year term and outline a 3-point plan and any key action items, either administrative or legislative, that you will pursue to achieve your vision. We'll begin with Mr. McGinnis.
I miss somebody. Joey, glad seeing you here tonight, man. Just wanted to let you know. Having worked in governmental administrations for over 15 years, I know on a first-hand basis what is necessary to get the job done. 1, bring accountability, professionalism, and integrity to parish government. We will hire an internal auditor as required by our charter. Inefficiencies in parish government will be detected and corrected. We will assign 1 employee for all transparency issues. 2, strictly enforce our neighborhood codes that hold residents and landlords accountable to a high standard expected here in St. Bernard. We will strengthen resident services. We will provide residents with well-maintained amenities, playgrounds, dog parks, and walking paths. We will repair drainage structures where needed. These initiatives will be funded with monies received from our LLT property sales. We currently have over $4 million in this fund. 3, protect our water system from future bouts with amoeba. Through a national search, we will hire a consultant to ascertain whether or not we are doing everything possible to provide quality water to our residents at a lowest cost. 4, reestablish our coastal and fisheries department. We will work tirelessly to have the restoration of our barrier islands be included in the state master plan. Leap forward. What does it look like in January 2020? Citizens have 100% confidence in their parish government. Our neighborhoods and thoroughfares are Disney-like clean. The CPRA, our fisheries, and parish government are all in agreement with St. Bernard Parish's coastal master plan. Our children are playing at a playground with a short bicycle ride from their home. 100% of our residents have 100% confidence in our hospital. We haven't had a detection of amoeba in 4 years. St. Bernard is the fastest growing bedroom community in the metropolitan area. The best thing about living in St. Bernard, right on cue, is living in St. Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis. Mr. Mallory.
Let's face it, St. Bernard's reputation has been tarnished by unethical and dishonest actions of some of our government leaders, whether it was their personal or professional decisions. We have been contaminated. They failed us. By the end of my 4-year term as your president, my success will be evident by the pride we will feel once again. I will clear the air, erase the misconceptions, and rejuvenate our government and communities. I will start at the core, at the center of our government, and work my way out. I feel we are wounded and we need to heal. My idea of success is to have a healthy government and a happy people in our parish. 3-point plan, clean our house first. We have to rewind, redo, rebuild, and recover from within. We got to collect all this data, we got to select it, and then we got to reflect on all the data that we get. Then we have to evaluate it. What's going to remain and what's got to go. And then we have to sustain that they are most beneficial to all our citizens. Evaluate the existing programs and projects. Eliminate the waste. Sustainability is to uphold those things we need to keep going. FEMA, Red Cross, Louisiana Road on projects, plans, etc. Mandate, the third thing, mandate accountability. We must all be accountable and responsible for our actions and decisions. To be accountable is to have honest explanations and answers, not excuses. All accountable, from our parish president to clerks to secretaries to council members to elected officials, etc. I don't care if you earn 6 figures a year or $6 an hour. Honesty will be our policy.
Thank you, Mr. Mallory. Mr. Rokas.
To create a thoughtless and transparent parish government, serve all the people of the parish, not the professional politicians. To have the parish budget surplus at $2 million at the end of my term. To work tirelessly with the Chamber of Commerce to attract new businesses to our parish to help our people get better jobs. Issue monthly financial statements on which our parish money is being spent. Also, where, and no surprises to the people. Also, we will give an annual state of the parish report. Update and let our people know where the parish money is going. Hire an inspector general to ensure the popular government spending, reduce wasteful spending, and prevent the fraud. Please, all of our people and hard working their dollars, and we want to know where they are going. Wisely commit to the saving of our coast. No diversions. Another important thing is to help our commercial fishermen because that's our main industry here in St. Bernard. To secure both federal and state dollars, which will help protect our parish and to help our commercial fishing industry. 100% committed to our Sheriff's Office, Jimmy Pullman, and also our Fire Department, Mr. Thomas Stone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rokas. Mr. Landry.
Thank you. Number one in the three-point plan is getting our house in order, making sure we have accountability and responsibility of our directors, putting the proper financial controls in place to make sure that our funds are handled appropriately, meeting with the council and developing a realistic budget. That's number one. Number two is to meet with the council and elected officials and business people so we can develop a strategic plan that will enhance our image and also enhance the business plans that we have in our business climate. And of course, the third step of that would be to implement those plans. In addition, how I measure success, in addition to having clean air and clean water, would be that our image would be much better when I leave this term than when I found it. One of the first things that I would like to do is bring all the council, the newly elected council members after the election's over, get with them, find out what it is they want to do to try and move the parish forward. Let's develop a little plan to where we can all accomplish what we want, not only individually for our districts, but in terms for the parish as a whole. Meeting with our business community on an ongoing basis to make sure we're always enhancing our strategic business plan. We need to have more businesses and more jobs than we have today, and that would be another measurement of success. Some of the interventions would be including tax incentives, maybe on a graduated scale to new businesses, holiday tax incentives for existing businesses and things of that nature, but always reaching out to get the input of our business community. Of course, improving our recreation department, making sure access is available to all of our children in the parish, have more meaningful programs in the summertime when, school's out and the recreation program should be more dependent upon those types of things in addition to keep those parks clean. I had mentioned before I want to have a quality of life department that will actually monitor all these things. And as far as the BP money that's coming down the pipe, I can commit to you that any supplies for that will be purchased in St. Bernard. Any labor that's necessary to commit to those industries will be done by St. Bernardians.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. We now move to a second question, and the next several questions until the last one were not provided to you in advance. Just so the public is aware, these were not provided to the candidates in advance. You each have 60 seconds to respond. And question 2 is, a key component to effectively leading St. Bernard forward is positively representing it to the region and the state. What has been the biggest deterrent to that positive image over the last year? And what have you done to positively represent St. Bernard beyond parish lines? And please be specific. We begin with Mr. Mellering.
1 minute. Okay. Well, as far as, first of all, to go to the end, as far as beyond parish lines, what I did is, after getting out of council, I continued going to Coastal Restoration Protection Authority meetings. I went to Houma, Morgan City, Baton Rouge, and continued to do that on my own time. Also, I participated in the St. Bernard Day at Baton Rouge, which I think most of you remember the seafood wrap that I did. Well, if not, okay. You got to get it next year. So that's what I did offline.
Thank you, sir. Next,
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. A key component to effectively leading St. Bernard forward is positively representing it to the region and the state. What's been the biggest deterrent to that positive image over the last year? And what have you done to positively represent St. Bernard beyond parish lines? And please be specific.
Well, personally, I haven't done too much. I work for a company that works mostly in St. Bernard and Plaquemine. But to make St. Bernard better is my answer. We have to really start from the outside, and we have to make these islands, start building up, to stop this coastal erosion. No, we won't be any more St. Bernard. Believe me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Landry.
Specifically, I think our hospital has been recognized nationally as well as regionally. I've been featured on the cover of the New Orleans Healthcare Journal magazine for the management of our hospital. That was a good, positive plug for St. Bernard. I've been invited nationally to speak at symposiums regarding healthcare as people are trying to find out how is it our hospital has been profitable since it's opened when others have failed at the same time. So I think I've represented us well. City Business Magazine has also recognized our efforts at the hospital, and that also has put a positive face on St. Bernard businesses, and St. Bernard talent.
Thank you. Mr. McGinnis.
This has been a tough couple of years for St. Bernard Parish. I've been right in the middle of it. Every time that we've had to deal with something, and it's been a lot, I believe that I've been very respectful and mindful that the people of St. Bernard Parish are being represented. You know, back in April of 14, 3 of us asked for the resignation of our parish president. I thought that was a very, very respectful letter that we wrote, and I think people appreciate that in St. Bernard Parish and throughout our region. The last few years, there's a lot of money being held up for St. Bernard Parish because of this. I traveled to Washington, D.C., spoke with Scalise, Vitter, and Garrett Graves, most importantly, to ensure that St. Bernard Parish receive a seat on CPRA. It's amazing to me that we don't have a seat in St. Bernard Parish on the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority. So I think I've represented our parish well in the heat of the heat moments in St. Bernard Parish. And I hope the people of St. Bernard Parish appreciate that tough position.
Thank you very much. Now, this is the third question, again, not provided in advance. Last year, St. Bernard Parish residents voted down 10 tax renewals for services that included libraries, fire protection, recreation, road maintenance, and the Council on Aging. Many individuals identified a lack of confidence in parish government as the reason why the millages failed. What would you do to restore the confidence of the voters in St. Bernard Parish government? We begin with Mr. Rokas.
Well, you have to first start by talking to your police officers, your fire department, checking and surround yourself with good, intelligent people. Once you do that, then you most probably have your first step. Then you talk to your councilman, you have an open door policy. If people come in, they have a problem, come in to talk to you, you see what you can do for them, and we'll work from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Landry.
I'm actually very concerned about that. I think what we need to do as leaders of the parish is we have a big facility that we can bring the public into and hold multiple meetings, and we need to educate the public on the revenue streams of this parish and what it means to the people of this parish in terms of services that the government is able to provide. I think that I like to look at what happened in terms of the failure of the millages, is that it's very difficult to get your message out as a government entity, but we have to take those extra steps to bring the public in and properly educate them. Let them know what they will have with it and what they will have without it. All of these, there may be 1 or 2 adjustments on them, but all of them are actually renewals. And that is the revenue streams that this government needs in order to operate and to function to provide the services that we all deserve and expect from our community. So I'm just a big advocate of bringing everybody in and hold as many meetings as necessary to move this forward, because it is critically important to the survival of this government.
Thank you. Mr. McGinnis.
You know, the election in itself is going to provide some confidence for the public going forward. You know, we have a lot of good people here running for parish president, and when one of us gets elected, that in itself, I think, is going to bring us forward, because we're all talking about accountability and image throughout our parish. I think Mr. Landry is correct. We need to educate our parish. I had a town hall meeting for every important decision that we made. Putting those taxes on the ballot, the $32 fee, the water rate increase. And if we had the amount of people that are here tonight, people might be educated and understand what's going on in their parish when it comes to taking money out of your pocket and paying for it. So we need this type of participation, not the apathy that we have in our community. And it's going to take someone who's honest, who's going to tell it like it is, and make decisions for the betterment of St. Bernard Parish, and not just getting reelected or trying to be somebody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mellery.
I know what everyone out there would most probably like to hear us say up here is that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and cut the water bill back, take sales tax, cut that, maybe even go in and try to review the charter to cut the council's salary. But I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you that, yes, I told you before that the government has put a black mark on us, but the past is behind us. We have to move forward. We have to go to the future. We can't keep looking in the rearview mirror behind us. We got to look forward. And I'm the one that can do that. I'm the one that can get a team together with the business management that I have, the experience, the team leadership that I have, and the experience that I have is 8 years as a councilman. I'm the one that can do that for this parish. Look forward, straight forward to the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mellery. Next question is, if you could restructure any department or component of the administration, what would it be and why? Mr. Rokas.
You'd have to construct from the president down. You have to start with a good leader. Without a good leader, your ship don't go anywhere. That's the main thing. Thank you.
All right. Next, Mr. Landry, if you had to restructure, or if you could restructure any department or component of the administration, what would it be and why?
Well, first, I think there's actually two answers to that from me, but first one would be the financial controls that are in place and the processes and procedures we're using in order to handle monies and things of that nature. The second thing is, I would anticipate us to need a lot more permits as we go out and promote the image of the parish and develop more business. So our permit office would need some technology improvements and things of that nature in order to accommodate all the influx that I would expect we would have in terms of permits. But the number one priority would be to restructure how we handle our financials, how we handle the entire financial process here at parish government, from revenue collection all the way to check writing out the door. So I think that would be where, if I had to pick one, that would be it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. McGinnis.
Our financial structure needs help. That's where my experience is, so I wouldn't start there. Resident Services is the department that specifically enforces our neighborhood codes. For me, and when I talk about Disney Light Clean, I'm talking about in our neighborhoods and on our thoroughfares. Blight in our neighborhoods is stopping people from moving to St. Bernard Parish. Having a new housing stock in St. Bernard Parish is stopping people from moving here. We live here. We see it every day. We don't notice it, though. And when somebody comes in our parish and they're looking for a home, they see the blight, they see the grass, they see a whole lot of blight that we don't see. So Resident Services does a great job. They just don't have enough resources to do the job that's needed to bring us forward into the future, because with that comes everything else.
Mr. Mallory?
I really can't say that I would change any department. The only thing that I see now is really what hurts is that we have good people that work for this parish. They do the job. You have to let them do their job that they know best. I see the morale is low. You have to pick that morale up. You have to make sure you have to protect people and back them up on everything that you do. In order for our employees to feel that way, they have to know that you will back them 100%, and then they will have a domino effect. They start working more efficient. You start saving on, whether it be the man cutting the grass on the NutriGround. He starts cutting it a lot better. He starts saving money on gas, and it's a domino effect. It starts rolling over to other departments. And then your parish will start seeing savings, and then we look at that savings, and then we use it for where we really need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Over the past few years, several actions by elected officials have been called into question as to whether those actions were allowed by the St. Bernard Parish Charter. Additionally, some individuals have promoted the idea of revisiting a police jury system of government or moving to a city manager form of government. Do you believe that the parish charter still works as the guiding document for our government structure? And please elaborate on why or why not. And we'll begin with Mr. Rokas.
Why not? Okay. There's only one thing that could work If you look at it, when you're parish president, you have to still surround yourself by good people. You have to talk to everyone that's involved. You have to talk to your St. Bernard, all of the people in St. Bernard. If they have a problem, you have them come in, they talk to you, you try to talk to them, and try and enjoy it. If they have an open door policy, come in, talk to you, and you can also find out what their problems are, and we try and see if we can help them out.
So you believe the current system is fine?
Current system right now is broken. We have to fix it. As the president is right now, we were the laughing stock of Louisiana. So we really have to get a real good president in here, and he has to do a great job to bring St. Bernard back. The only way to bring it back.
But you keep it as a parish system?
Right.
Okay. Mr. Landry, again, the question is whether you would consider revisiting a police jury system of government or moving to a city manager form of government, and do you believe that the charter still works as it is?
I do believe the charter still works as it is. However, it's only as good as the people that we elect to fulfill the roles in it. One of the things, I sat on the council for 3 years, some time ago, but one of the problems I see is between the president and the council is there's no synergy that ever develops between them. A good president will work with the council. He'll open up the kimono to them, bring them in, allow them to do certain things, access information, and provide them with certain tools so they can be more effective. I think that the charter provides for a very strong president. When you have a good qualified president that knows what he's doing, knows how to manage properly, and can work with a council, I think you'll see great effective results for our parish. I think that we haven't had that type of cooperation between the president and the council. I'm extremely excited that we're going to have at least 4 new councilmen coming up to this dais, and I look forward to the opportunity of working with them to take us into the future.
Thank you. Mr. McGinnis.
I said it when I ran for office for council, and I'll say it again today. The parish president under this charter has way too much power. I'm not saying this is the wrong system, but the parish president, as we know over the last 3 years, has way too much power in this form of government. Right now we vote for a council member. Everyone votes for the east member, the west member, and a parish president. So all 4 of them are pointing at each other and blaming each other for things that are going wrong. I'll try to give you a real quick thing about something personal with me. Mr. Floyd Landry was my police juror. Painting my house, I was a young man building a home, had a puddle, I had water running, water puddle in front of my house. He come by, he introduced himself, he said, "Man, what's this here?" I said, I'm gonna get it in a drain, Mr. Landry. He said, "All right, sir, I'll see you tomorrow." "Son, I'll see you tomorrow." Well, I didn't see him, but I had a drain right there in front of my house, and there was no more water puddle in front of my house. That got results, and I'm not saying it's the best thing, but when you got one person that's accountable, he's going to make sure that he gets the job done.
Thank you. Mr. Melleray.
The charter's working. It's just not handled right. I mean, you have an administration that doesn't want to follow the charter. So the council that, I will say that's up here, has tried to do their best to handle the administration like that. But me as your parish president, and I keep saying I'm a team leader, I can still go ahead and work with council, make a team. But to quickly say it, I went through both parts. My grandpa was a police juryman, my daddy was a police juryman, my uncle was a police juryman. And yes, I'm friends with Mr. Floyd, he was a police juryman. And the system did work, they had a couple of bad apples. But the charter does work, it just needs to be tweaked a little bit. I think it needs to be changed, that it's no part-time job. Any councilman up here knows that it's not a part-time job, knows that your phone stays on 24 hours a day. So that's what I feel. The charter does work, it just needs to be tweaked. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to apologize because of the last-second changes in the panel. We ended up going in the same order here for the last several questions, but we're going to break away from that finally. For our final question, which again was provided in advance, so the public should know you were provided with this question in advance so you could prepare. And you will have 2 minutes to respond to this question. We recently memorialized the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Outside of elected office, what role have you played in St. Bernard's recovery, and how have you supported civic and business groups in rebuilding our community? Please be specific. And we begin with Mr. Landry.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked that question. I spoke earlier about, representing our parish in a positive light for certain things. Many of you know that the last 7 years of my life, I've donated my time for free to St. Bernard Parish to not only put the funds together to build the hospital. With the help of Mr. Kavanagh, we actually accomplished what we set out to do. Operationally, I've also stepped up to the plate and served as this chief executive officer of the hospital for 3 years for free. And the reason why I'm saying for free is not to brag on the donation of my time to the parish. However, I did earn that bragging right, but because there are a lot of people that have rumors out there that I've made a fortune off the hospital. I want you to know that in the last 7 years of doing something so desperately needed for our community, that, at the end of the day, I'm glad that I was able to have the skill sets to do it. I'm glad that we actually have access to health care now. And I neglected my own businesses to do that. I neglected everything in my life to do that for St. Bernard Parish. And all that is for me is a testament to how much I care about where I live, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. I'm not running for this job of president to have a job. I'm running to get the job done. And at the end of the day, I don't think anyone can attest more that my heart is not in the right place to do things for our parish. And I do appreciate the kind words to my father, because the apple never falls far from the tree. And I'm very proud of my father. And I'm very proud of his record of commitment to this parish. And either good news or bad news, I inherited those genes from him, so I'll fuss at him later for me going through this agony. But I think that I think certain things speak for themselves, and I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, and there was a lot more people than me that made it happen, and I want to be very clear about that. So with that said, and I like hearing that we might even see some support in the next couple of months while they're still on the council for the hospital.
Thank you. Mr. McGinnis.
Katrina's in my rearview mirror. And my wish is that these type of questions become non-existent. I had many roles in the recovery of our parish, and it was such a humbling experience and involved so many people that seeking credit or attention doesn't seem to be an appropriate thing to do. I did teach and coach in our public school system that we all have become so proud of. My wife and I have been spending most of our time putting 2 daughters through college, 1 through high school and college, since Katrina, all of which have received their degree. They are now educators and coaches in our public school system. 2 of my daughters have purchased homes since Katrina and are now raising our 4 grandchildren in St. Bernard. My youngest moved out recently, not because of me, and chose to live in St. Bernard Parish. Our family went from 1 address to 4 addresses, and that's what we need here in St. Bernard Parish. And we're looking forward to expanding even more right here in St. Bernard Parish.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mallory.
Okay, I understand the question. But first, I have to say this. For 3 years after Katrina, I was part of a great unified council and administration. Junior Rodriguez was the president when Katrina hit. I held an intricate part in getting our parish on the road to recovery after that horrifying event. There was no manual to read. We wrote the manual. There was no Google, no Facebook. So we went ahead, not only did we devote 3 years of our lives in this office, we never left. I stayed for the duration of the suffering. Not only did I stay, I rolled up my sleeves, devoted my time and energy and resources to my neighbors, rescue and rebuilding, and duration for the recovery. Now I answer the question. Out of office, I answered it before. I continued my commitment by going to coastal protection restoration meetings all over the state. I'm committed to making sure St. Bernard Parish gets its share of the monies, whether it be Katrina funds or whether it be funds from the Clean Water Act, the BP spill. I'm committed with that, and I will stay committed to St. Bernard, whether I'm in office or not. Hopefully, I'm in office for the next 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rokas.
I guess I could say I was not living here in St. Bernard Parish after Katrina on 205. My daughter and her husband were living here. My wife and I lived in New Orleans East. We also had a place at Lake Catherine, which we have lost everything, just like the poor people here in St. Bernard, so we know how they feel. Many of my friends lived in St. Bernard who lost everything also. I do know one thing, the St. Bernard people are strong, and they made it very, very well and came back very strong. My wife and I supported most of the businesses down here after Katrina. We decided to look around and try and move from New Orleans East. We did. We found St. Bernard Parish as our home. We're surely glad we found it. 22 years I've been working for a land company, and they have a lot of possessions here in St. Bernard and Plaquemine Parish.
Thank you, sir. We'll now have your closing statements. You'll have a minute each for your closing statements. We're going to begin with Mr. McGinnis.
Once again, I want to thank you guys for putting this on. I heard a few things here tonight, put monthly financial statements online. Well, I authored 4 transparency laws here in St. Bernard Parish. They're not being followed very well right now, but every single penny, every single check out of the checkbook should be online. I've heard the term realistic budget. By the way, the charter requires a balanced budget. We walked into a $4.5 million deficit budget with sales tax that were going to be $4.5 million. We didn't know it at the time. $4.5 million under. That's a $9 million difference, and we fixed that within 1 year. I'm not running for parish president to be somebody. I'm running for parish president because I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a grandfather. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mallory.
As you can see, we all have strengths and weaknesses. All of us bring different things to the table. I'm actually proud to be in the company of my opponents. Could you imagine, what could get done in our parish if we just all work together? We have heard a lot of number crunching and statistics tonight, but honestly, the people of St. Bernard don't care what we know until they know that we care. And I am here to tell you that I care. You know why? Because I am St. Bernard. My heart leads me. My gut guides me. My hands are ready to help. Anyone can join the race, but that stick on the front of their chest. But what it really needs is longevity, accountability, sustainability, pride, trust, professionalism, teamwork, respect. Together, everyone achieves more. That's what team means. T-E-A-M. Together, everyone achieves more. Thank you to Chamber for this opportunity. I humbly ask everyone for your support again. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate each and every one of you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rokas.
Let's try and create a trustworthy and transparent parish government. Serve all of the people, not just parties. Stay away from the professional politicians. First time running as a politician. We will also have a parish budget at the end of the 4-year term of a surplus of $2 million. We'll be out of the deficit. We'll also work tirelessly with our chamber to attract the new businesses to our parish, and let's create more new jobs for the people of St. Bernard. And I'm going to make a challenge here tonight to all my opponents. I would like to donate my money, if I'm parish president, $25,000 to our sheriff's office, Jimmy Pullman, and $25,000 to our fire department to make it a better St. Bernard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Landry.
Thank the Chamber for having us once again. Thank everyone that showed up tonight and showed such a great interest in the future of our parish. And That's a very generous offer, Mr. Rokas. I just want to tell you I admire and respect that. I thought you was going to keep going and say like 50,000 for me or something, but anyway, Ricky Mellerine summed it up best, I believe, for everyone. You know, the real task of the next president is not only to possess the skill sets, and I know each one of us up here are fine people, and I don't think anybody can go wrong with us. I just happen to believe that my skill sets, my experience, my education, and what I've accomplished in my career would be a great set of skills to bring to the table to take St. Bernard into the future in such a very positive way. I share the sentiments up here, and I think since I'm last, we ought to all give all of those guys a good round of applause for all the enthusiasm and heart that they have into running for this office. So thank y'all.
Thank you, and there you go. Thank you to our parish president candidates, Wayne J. Landry, Guy McGinnis, Tony Ricky Mellerine, and Roland Jimmy Rokas.